Hello and welcome to Garden Chatter, where we connect gardeners, bloggers, and experts so that we can all grow and learn together. Tonight we have a great show. We are going to be discussing no-till gardening, and we have a guest that's going to help us out with that, Dave Clark. And Dave, he contacted me, and we agreed that he'd join us, and he sent me an email, and I had all these topics to choose from. It's just like a kid in a candy store. He said, well, do you want to... I have to read a list here. No-till gardening, or herbs, herbalism, medical gardening, all about roses, carnivorous plants, gardening for wildlife, plant propagation, and it went on. So we went for the no-till gardening. So I'm really excited to talk about that. That's a direction I've been trying to move in myself. So let's see. Brent, my co-host Brent, is joining us from Ohio. Brent, how are you?
Hey, pretty good, guys. I'm exhausted. This out
Gardening too much today?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of how it is in Ohio. We've got, it went from winter to now it's summer. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. But I did spend a lot of time just staring over at my big vegetable garden that has a nice layer of compost and manure on it, just
Right.
waiting for tonight so I can learn something, and maybe we'll try something new this year. Before we get started, though, if you're joining us tonight on the Google Hangout, you're going to want to take your cursor and just tap it up at the top of your screen there, and you'll see a grid. Click on the grid. You'll see a Q&A. Click the Q&A, and you'll get a nice little column on the right-hand side where I hope you'll ask questions for David tonight or just say hi. You can also join in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #GardenChatter. So I'm all set. You guys ready?
Awesome. I'm ready.
We're ready. Yeah. Let's do that. All right. Well, Dave, you are a horticultural instructor for the Buffalo and Erie County Botanical Gardens, Phipps, Conservatory, and Botanical Gardens. And you do a lot of national garden teaching and instructing. So super excited to have you on, and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's nice to speak with you guys, Brent. Adam, good to talk with you guys. I hope we get a lot of questions and a lot of people tuning in tonight on this thing, because it's a real unusual, different way of preparing gardens.
Yeah. Well, kind of before we fully dive into that, why don't you just tell a little bit about just where you're located and a little bit of what you're up to. You're also you're a florist as well.
Yeah. I live right outside of Buffalo, New York, about 20 minutes away from that. And actually, my day job, I'm a wholesale florist for one of the major wholesalers in the area, and we are right in the middle of Mother's Day. Pretty early in the morning, so I had to come home and take a nap today to get ready for this whole thing. And Mother's Day is the holiday. Everybody has a mother someplace, and it just never seems to end, and it goes on and on and on and on. And I knew that I had to do this tonight and wanted to do this tonight, so I just rearranged my schedule for you guys. So yeah, I teach at the Buffalo and Erie County Botanical Gardens. I started out teaching 9 plants in the basement of the garage how to grow a Venus flytrap with a little computer and a couple of photographs. And the education director was in the room, and she said, "Oh my God, everybody's having such a good time, and you're so much fun, and you just get them all involved with it." She goes, "How about if you come up with another class?" So I did. She asked me back into her office on a Tuesday and says, "You know, you're really great at this, and we have been looking for an educator to do a horticulture certificate program." And she said, "I'm pretty good at choosing a winning racehorse," and she said, "I think I just found ours." So it started out from Venus flytraps in the basement to a bird class, and now I teach over 20 classes. My students get certificates at the end of each classes, and I teach hundreds of gardeners in Western New York how to grow plants and food, hydroponics and everything. It's very interesting. And then I broke into the whole national thing, where I got invited to Costa Mesa, California, and I'm just back from Connecticut from the Northeast Floral Expo for a terrarium class, and been to Georgia and Pittsburgh. Down at Phipps is a great place to teach at too. So it's very amazing what this has done for me.
That's awesome. I mean, what a great way for you to learn as well. Is like
absolutely. I learn every time. I learn so much every time I do one of these classes, because I have to research and make it new all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. That's part of the thing I like doing these garden chatters, so that I can learn as well. People. So, well, what about so no-till gardening? Maybe you can kind of dive in and tell us, like, what is it and what are some of the advantages of it, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, I'll give you a little background, and you know, everybody's in the same. I think most of the country is in the same position that I am. Is we just want to get out there and garden. We've been a lot cooped up in our houses, right, Brent, for all these months. I'm sure you had that crazy winter that we had, and people are just trying to get out there. But our weather was behind by about 4 weeks because it was cold, and we had about a 3-foot permafrost up here in Western New York.
Yeah.
So people wanted to get out and start digging, and I keep telling them, if you pick up that ball of soil and you can't tap it, and it, you know, it stays into a ball, then it's too wet for you to be gardening. If you can tap it and it falls apart, then it's really, really good. So what's the first thing they want to do? They want to go out and get the rototiller, okay, and start digging up the ground, because that's how I was taught how to do this. And, you know, we would, on the farm, we would tune the rototiller up and sharpen the tines up and sharpen our trowels and things like that, and I'd have all the lime and fertilizer, you know, ready to go. And if I was smart enough, maybe I'd put a layer of manure on the garden beds in the fall, which is really when you guys want to start doing your preparation for soil. Okay, you can do a quick garden in the springtime, but the best way to do it is in the fall, because you can also change pH a lot. And pH, you can only change 1 point every season. Okay, if you try to change it too much and put too much lime on, then you lock all the nutrients in the soil, and it's worse than if you did anything. Okay, so while my brother and Dad were out there tilling the cornfields, okay, for the cattle on the farm, my job was to go out and get the rototiller. And my dad said, "Now I want you to rototill the garden," and he says, "I want you to rototill it real, real deep." And I go, "Okay, well," and that's what I had done for years. And you know, I grew wonderful crops of weeds. We had horses and things like that. So, oh, you know, I'm learning about composting and mulching, and I'm going to put hay on the soil and rototill the soil. And so not only did I grow a great crop of weeds, I grew a wonderful grass lawn in the vegetable garden. So folks, don't use hay for composting and mulch in your gardens, because it's all grass seeds, okay?
Right.
Cows have how many stomachs? Four or 5 stomachs? Horses have 1, right? Brenda's thinking, how many do they have? Okay, so cows can digest all the grass, and they kind of like pre-sprout the grass seeds in their gut, and it comes out the other end as usable fertilizer. Okay, so you know, I would get out there with a rototiller, and you're working it really, really hard. And what else are you doing behind the rototiller? What do you see? Footprints, right? So what we're doing with a rototiller, that most people, that's why they do it, is we think we are aerating the soil, which we are. Okay, and if you get down really deep to that 12 or 18 inches, you are aerating the soil, but you're also leaving tire tracks from the rototiller and your own hoof tracks. Okay, and what are you doing in that case? You're packing down the soil again, and you're compacting it. So compaction is one of the biggest issues that we have in soils when you work machinery. And here in Western New York, the biggest complaint that I have is clay soil. Okay. What kind of soil do you have, Brent, in your area? You have a lot of clay?
There's a lot of clay, but where I do my vegetable garden, we've put a lot of organic matter in, so it's some pretty good soil.
Pretty good stuff.
Oh, and for the hoof, hoof marks, I kind of have a system. I kind of kick it as I move it,
okay.
So you can't see it.
Yeah, so you're going back and forth through the rototiller like this. Yeah. What kind of soil do you have, Adam, out at your place?
Oh, it's definitely a lot of clay in it, and in the summer, it bakes super hard, and like
that's another thing that happens with it. So when you get done with a rototiller, you have this nice powdery soil to work on, and hopefully, like Brent, you kicked your footprints out of the way. But what happens when the rain comes down and the sun comes out? You have a real fine layer of clay on the top.
Yeah.
So what happens when it rains and the sun comes down? It makes like an impermeable soil surface that then rain can't get through, the air can't get down through. So you've almost negated all the good that you've done with a rototiller by doing the rototiller thing. Okay, so I've been brought on board by a church community garden, and they want to do this no-till gardening thing. And up until a couple of months ago, I wasn't really experienced with what this thing was. I'm like, what is this? I teach a permaculture class at the Botanical Gardens, and we discuss horticulture and keyhole gardening and things like that. So I was a little exposed to it. But no-till gardening, oh my God, where's the Rototiller? Don't use one. Okay, now, it is not my place to negate the fact that people should not buy garden machinery. Okay, I do not want to do that. It's a viable business. It employs hundreds of thousands of people. Okay, but if you can borrow a rototiller from somebody, that's even better, because you're really, for this no-till garden thing, you're really only going to use it one time. Okay, and the one time we're going to do it is we're going to do a deep till down to 18 inches if you can. Okay, to get that soil broken up in the bottom. And if the land has been worked before in a farm with repeated plowings from year to year, perhaps they've created what's called a plow pan under the soil. Okay, you know what a plow pan is? That's where the soil has been compacted by the plows, and it creates an impermeable layer so that the water can't get down past that 18 or 24 inches. Okay? So again, that's what we're trying to negate with the no-till gardening. Okay, we're just trying to break the soil up. So I don't know, have you guys heard of lasagna style gardening?
Mm-hmm.
Lasagna style?
Yes.
Okay, I like to call it sheet composting. Okay. Instead of lasagna garden style, I teach classes, you know, and gardening is just like cooking, really, isn't it? Isn't it just like cooking? You start out with all these little ingredients and you put it together and you mix it and you water it, and like with lasagna or sheet composting, you let it bake. Okay. One of the things when you're doing any kind of gardening and you're putting compost or vegetable matter into it, a good way to take care of about 75% of the weed problems is mix it in with your tillers or your other tools. I'm going to talk about some other implements you can use with this, and water it. And then walk away for 4 days. Don't plant your gardens right away, because what's going to happen in 4 days? What have we brought up to the top of the soil from this deep tilling? Hundreds of thousands of weed seeds. Okay, so that's another reason why no-till gardening is a really wonderful thing for weeds, because you're not continually bringing up all these seeds that have been buried under the ground for centuries. You know, some weed seeds are viable for up to 80 years. When they're, yeah, for 80 years. So every time you do a deep till, you bring them up to the top. So till your garden, water it, and then about 4 days later, you're going to go out with one of your implements, whether it's a hoe or a Dutch scuffle hoe. Okay? And all you're going to do is you're going to take it and you're going to scuffle it through about the top 2-inch layer of soil. You're not going any deeper than that, because what's in that top 2 inches of soil? Weeds, the germinated weeds. Okay, sunlight really only penetrates the top 2 to 3 inches of soil. So then once you get through and do this one-time scuffle hoe or a scratcher, then you water it again and wait another 3 days. Then go through and cultivate it again, and now you can go ahead and put your mulches on the top, insert your transplant, do your seeding and things like that, and you probably have gotten rid of about 90% of the weeds for the season. Okay, just by pre-sprouting things. You know, so the other really important part of not only no-till gardening, but gardening itself, is organic matter. Okay? Which soil is more fertile, sand or clay?
That'd be clay.
Clay. Why?
I forget exactly, but it's got more nutrients.
It's got more nutrients in it, but they're chemically and electrostatically locked up. They're called PEDs,
right,
you know, into the PEDs of the clay. So what we have to do to make clay soil more growable and usable for the plants is we have to blow open that structure. Okay? Used to be that we were taught we had to throw gypsum on it, which is a calcium product. We were told that we had to put sand on it. Okay? But when you put clay and sand together and you get some water mixed with it, what happens to it? What can you make? Bricks and plates. Bricks and plates.
Yeah.
Okay. So the key thing with no-till gardening and all of your other gardenings is organic matter and compost. Okay. Compost is going to get in, the organic matter is going to get in between those clay particles, because clay actually, it slides like a plate. Okay. And in between those plates, that's where all the nutrients are. The other thing that organic matter does for no-till gardening is it not only blows those PEDs apart, but it also puts air into the soil. Okay? Because plants need not only food and water, but they also need air. Okay? Air not only in the atmosphere for them to produce photosynthesis, but they also need air at the roots. How many times have people planted roses, okay, in a garden, and they didn't do that water percolation test, okay, which is where you dig a hole, you fill it with water, and you see how fast that water drains out of there. If it drains out in about 2 hours, that's perfect. You're going to put that rose bush in there. If it doesn't drain out in 3 days, go ahead and put that $150 magnolia tree in, and it's going to grow not at all. Okay, so it's about site assessment and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's about getting this organic matter into it. What we want to do with this sheet gardening process, this can be done on a lawn where something has never been gardened before, never had a garden on it, and you use layers of cardboard, you use layers of newspaper, and what you do is you can sprinkle a little bit of garden soil or compost on that turf first. Then you lay layers of cardboard on it. Cardboard and newspaper are made out of cellulose. Okay. If anybody does vermicomposting or worm composting in the kitchen, what's the bedding that you put in a vermicomposter for the worms? It's newspaper.
Right, shredded newspaper or cardboard. Yeah, I have a space like that right now. We have an area that I just removed a trampoline, and it's very compacted. In fact, I think it might be part of a loop driveway that was there before we moved on this property. So I'm in the process of, I'm planting a few fruit trees, but I'm going to layer out cardboard and, you know, might do a little bit of cover cropping, you know, in there as well. So that's something I'm getting started.
Yeah, cover cropping would be good in the fall. You want to do your cover crops in the fall and let them germinate and grow through the winter season. And then in the springtime, you can either use a string trimmer, okay, and just trim the greens off of it, because like grass clippings and a lot of our foliage, the greens, they have a nitrogen level of 5. What's the numbers that you see on your fertilizers bag? An awful lot. 5, 10, 5, 5, 10, 10. Okay, so your greens automatically have 5% nitrogen. So if one of the reasons why cover crops are a good thing, and you don't till them in really, really deep, okay, you want to leave the root system of the plants in there, because that creates food for the earthworms and the other soil organisms to feed on. And as the earthworms feed on the root system, they create channels in the soil that allow air to percolate downward and water to percolate downward, and it's like having your own little cultivators. Worms are the cultivators that we really, really want to get. So, Adam, by putting down this cardboard and things like this in this trampoline area, because they feed on cellulose, they're going to come up from the bottom 24 inches of the soil where they live, and as they come up, what do? They chew and they eat and they make beautiful worm castings, okay, worm poo. And as they come up to the top of the surface and feed on the cellulose, they create these channels in the soil. Okay? So that's one of the basics of this no-till gardening thing, is keep the worms going. Okay? The other thing that happens with the rototiller, what are those tines? What are they? They're knives.
Well, they're choppers. Yeah.
Right. They're choppers.
Yeah.
Okay. We want to aim for about 7 worms per square foot of soil. Okay. Now, there's not only worms in the soil. Okay. What else would be in the soil that makes it work? We have it in compost.
There's millipedes, centipedes, and earwigs. I mean, there's all kinds of little micro arthropods.
Right. And there's also fungi and bacteria. Okay. And all these fungi and bacteria, like, say you leave iced tea on your kitchen counter too long, okay, and it's got honey in the top of it. What grows in the iced tea glass? Mold.
I'm assuming mold, but I haven't left any iced tea out for a little while.
Okay. So. Okay.
You're making me feel kind of bad, because I usually walk around in my garden barefoot, thinking with all the mold, maybe that's not such a good idea.
No. Molded. Well, what do you? Blue cheese. What's the mold in blue cheese?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay. So there's beneficial molds and fungi too. So in the soil strata, okay, there are not only the earthworms, but there's also fungi and bacteria, and like just with this iced tea glass or whatever, the mold and the fungi grows in a layer. And the same thing happens in the soil. Each of these things has their own layer, and they work symbiotically together. So when you take that rototiller and go through the soil, you're basically disturbing all of those layers, okay? And it has to start over again. It's like destroying a sourdough culture. You have to start it all over again. So too much rototilling can then really kill the soil, okay? The one thing that I stress in all of my soil science classes is soil is a living thing, okay? You have to treat it with care. It likes water, it likes to be fed and things like that. And if you stir up too much of the living organisms, you're going to kill it, okay? And then it's not bioactive, and then you're really in a bind, because that's the stuff that happened in the mid-1940s out west, okay, in the Dust Bowl, because they were doing all of this farming and this agriculture and intensive farming that they stirred the soil up so much. I mean, what happens when you use a rototiller or you scuffle even soil? There's a dust layer that comes off the top, right? That's topsoil, okay? In 1937, it's a fascinating quote. Franklin D. Roosevelt, in a letter to the 47th Congress, he stated, "A nation that destroys its soil destroys itself." Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened in the Dust Bowl area is all of those inches of topsoil actually blew away. Okay? Just like the cyclone in The Wizard of Oz, you know, when that came down and all the dust was coming up in the air, it all blew from the west to the east. Okay.
Right.
How many years does it take nature to create 1 inch of topsoil?
Long time.
500
years.
500 years on its own. Okay.
Yeah.
Soil is being swept, washed away almost 10 to 40 times faster than it's being replaced. Okay, so that's another reason for people to do this no-till gardening. Now, let's, so we're going to go back to lasagna. Okay, we made our noodles at the bottom with the cardboard and the paper. Then on top of that, you're going to put a layer of compost. Okay, compost is bioactive. It has the bacteria and the fungi in it that's going to break down the cellulose and things like that. And then above that is layers. It's like you're making a cake. There's soil, okay? Then there's leaves, and hopefully people do not haul the leaves out of the yard. Okay, that's all the goodness, and that's also cellulose that can feed the earthworm population. Okay?
Right.
So above that you go soil, leaves. If you have cow manure, you can buy bagged composted cow manure for $1.49 at some of the stores. And your local garden centers, which I really want people to go to. Okay? So it's soil, leaves, manure. You can put kitchen scraps on that have not been composted yet. You can put finished composted on, and you want to make a layer of about 8 or 12 inches. Okay? That's the depth that we want to do. You mix it lightly, add a little bit of water, let it bake for a week or two, go out and scuffle the top of the soil and kill the weeds like we mentioned before, and then it's ready to plant. Okay? Oh, but where's the machinery?
Okay, so I just want to do a shout out really quick. Lisa, who is Houseplant Guru, I hope you follow her on Twitter.
Yeah, I follow her today.
Oh, good. You guys should talk about your Venus flytrap thing you started with, because that's a houseplant, right?
Right, it is. Yes, it is.
So Lisa commented on the Google Hangout here. My dad was a rototiller king. I think he did it every week in the walkway in the garden to keep the weeds down. But if he had not tilled, there probably wouldn't have been as many weeds. Very interesting. I can relate. I kind of do the same thing in my garden too. So.
Yeah, that's correct. Because every time, like we mentioned, every time you take that rototiller out there, you're just bringing up new weed seeds. So let's take a look at what happens in woods and forests every fall. Okay, for years and years and eons, leaves and twigs drop on the surface. Okay. The green grasses and the plants are bent over by the layer of leaves, and we call this layer mulch. Okay? The entire lot is then covered up by winter. The snows come down, the freeze-thaw, and things like that. And freeze-thaw is a weathering condition that creates soil also from rocks. I mean, you've seen these big, huge rocks in the mountains, Adam, out your way. I know you were just in New Mexico, where the tree roots and ice get in it, and it's such a strong, powerful force that it splits these rocks apart. Okay, that's what our winter times do here. So organic mulch is why they're important in no-till gardening. They keep the soils moist. They regulate the temperatures. Okay, they act like carbon dioxide sponges. Okay, they sequester atmospheric carbon. We know about the carbon issues that we're having with the greenhouse effect in the world today. Okay, and a lot of it is because the soils don't have enough organic matter into it. Okay, so they also protect the soils from compaction and erosion, so we don't lose the topsoil. Okay? And again, plants need food, water, and again, air as a soil. So there's a lot of things that happen in the soil: the herbivores, the detrivores that digest the material, the earthworms, the fungi, and the bacteria, the humus. Okay, humus is decayed vegetable matter. Okay, you can take a bag of leaves in the fall, which people can do if they don't have a compost pile, in a trash bag or a black bag, put it on the side of the house, put it near the fence line. You could poke a couple holes in it, run a little bit of water in it, and by the springtime you have an entire bag full of humus now that you can put onto your grounds. Okay, humus pulls the soil particles together, and it helps the nutrients stay in the soil. So if you don't have enough organic matter in the soil, what do you have to resort to? Fertilizers.
Yeah.
Okay? Mostly chemical fertilizers. Okay? But organic fertilizers, again, would be your compost and things like that. So in the springtime, the soil warms up. The worms come from the bottom of the surface. They feed on the organic matter at the top, and they aerate and add water-holding abilities to the soil. And biologically active soil is formed that now is going to support the plant growth. Okay? So how do we translate this into our land? What can you do? Okay? Doing nothing can probably be the best practice, right? There are tools out there besides rototillers that are called broad forks. Okay? And you can do a process called double digging. I know I was talking to Adam today, and you said that you were doing some double digging, or you have done in the past?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, basically dig, like my raised beds are 12 inches, so I dig. I mean, it's a bit of work, certainly. I have to, dig out the 12 inches that's in the bed, and then I go down another, 8 to 12 inches below that to really loosen up that layer down there, and then try to dump in some compost and things like that. But, of course, that disturbs the whole system and is, it's not quite like tilling with a rototiller where you finally chop everything, but it's definitely disruptive. And so I'm trying to minimize doing that now and using more cover crops and more compost and stuff. Which brings me up kind of a little bit of a problem is, say, this area where I have the trampoline and I want to do some lasagna, layered covering there. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of material to bring in, roughly, say 12 inches. And so
Yes.
I think that's an issue with this, is it requires so much input. It's hard to get enough material to, go that deep. So, I don't know if you have any ideas. I've been in the fall in our city. People put out bags of leaves, so I go around and I collect. I have a truck and I get truckloads. I mean, they're free. People,
Yeah.
I don't have time to educate them that they should keep them, so they've already raked them up for me and put them in bags. So I get
Better
piles
for you.
of those.
Better for you. You get the leaves. Better for you.
That's
Don't
right.
forget too.
And,
Don't forget too. At the fall time, people are taking their Halloween decorations down. All those straw bales. Straw bales are like gold in no-till gardening.
Yeah, I found someone who had a wedding and was offloading a bunch of straw bales for not too much, and I got a pretty good collection still, although I'm going through them. And the other thing I do is I get like lawn clippings from my neighbor. I know he doesn't really use any, weed and feed kind of fertilizers at all, so he just dumps it over the fence because he would otherwise need to get rid of it. So you can also get like wood chips from, you might not want to use those in the lasagna, but certainly in walkways and stuff you can get truckloads of wood chips delivered for not too much from tree limb. So I don't know if you have any other ideas of ways that people can get more.
Yeah, and that's an issue with even with composting things. When you need the green to go with the brown, the green is gone, and all you have left is brown. Okay, so it's about stockpiling. One thing I want to tell you too, Adam, you were picking up the grass clippings and stuff, and good thing that you mentioned. Make sure that you don't put any kind of grass clippings that have an herbicide on it and layer it on your vegetables or landscape plantings, because the herbicide will still kill. So you want to make sure that you're
Right.
getting clean, organic type materials.
Yeah, that's why I checked with him to make sure that he's not using any kind of chemicals on it. So I guess then it comes to growing cover crops and things to try to actually grow your own and work it back into the soil so that you're not bringing inputs from outside the garden.
That's correct.
Because to be really sustainable, you need to be able to do it all in your own place. So
right. You try to, and some municipalities have commercial or residential composting type area. The only thing about that is you really don't know what's been taken to the compost pile, and you can still pick up some bad soil and things like that. So, again, that is an issue as far as getting all that material available in your yard. So once you get like you did, your double digging and things like that, you can dig down 12 inches, and then if you don't want to dig out the next 12 inches, you can just use a garden fork and puncture that down through the ground like this, just to get the aeration going on. Some people actually take out another 12. Okay, I did it one time. I threw my back out. I'll never double dig again. So that's an issue too with this. An easier way to do it is to get your hands on a broad fork. Okay, and a broad fork is a real old-fashioned style of garden implement. It has arms that come up like this, and it has poles on it, and it has teeth that are about 24 or 36 inches long, and it's got a bar down at the bottom like this. Okay, so and you stand on this bottom bar, and you punch it down into the ground, and you rock it back and forth. And what that does is it doesn't shift the soil levels, but it breaks that bottom soil apart. They're a couple $100 a piece. Okay. But a rototiller is a couple $100 a piece too.
Yeah.
So
I want to
get the soil in there. Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying I want to get one. I don't have one yet. I just have a digging fork. So I grew some cover crops last fall. I planted them, and I had mostly rye, but it was a mix. And so I'm just now finishing the last couple beds of, say there's ryegrass that's about 3 feet tall and pretty thick. So
awesome.
Chopping that down and mostly just using my digging fork to kind of turn the roots, just get the roots almost turned upside down.
Yes.
And then I put a layer of compost on that, and then I have, of course, my straw that sat out all winter, so it's kind of soggy and half, starting to decompose, compost a little bit. And so then when I'm planting now, I'm just kind of creating a little crack in that, and putting my seedlings in, and then putting compost around. So I think that's going to work pretty well. So I'm going to just keep.
Yeah, and again, that's the trick with the no-till gardening. Once you get your soil beds done, pretty much the most important thing is not to walk in your beds once you get them finished. Okay, the optimum size for a bed is about 4 feet wide, okay, or 4 foot square. If anybody does the square foot garden, okay, square foot where it's a 4 foot square, and you break the squares up in the middle into a grid system. Okay, it's made in a garden frame like a raised bed, and once you get your soil mixture in there, which is a combination of garden soil, Mel Bartholomew is a gentleman that introduces. I've had great success with square foot garden. I'm a single person. I don't need a huge vegetable garden. Okay, I can get everything I need out of a 4 foot square. So it's a mixture of soil, compost, vermiculite, and you mix it all together, and you have this box, and then you lay a frame on top of it, and you plant in between the frames. Okay, 1 square foot can hold 1 tomato plant. 1 square foot can hold 9 pepper plants. 1 square foot can hold 16 carrots. Okay, so the other thing about no-till gardening is you don't need a huge vegetable garden if you work the soil correctly and you keep feeding it. Okay, you have to feed the soil. You're getting so much produce and so much work out of that 1 little square foot.
Yeah, I haven't actually done any square foot gardening. I mean, like strictly really focusing on the square feet, but it definitely.
So when you say you have to feed the soil there, what do you mean by that again?
Well, feeding the soil is not, it's not, okay. Fertilizers are plant food. Okay. Feeding the soil is organic matter. That's the difference. And people sometimes go, oh, I got to get some plant food. Well, you know, it's not feeding the soil. And actually, too much fertilizer is a way. Plants are like kids going to a fast food place, okay, or a candy store. The more they get, the more they want. And especially if you're using a non-organic thing, they just continually need larger and larger amounts of fertilizer. And if you're using chemical fertilizers, a lot of them are salt-based. And we all know what happens in the wintertime with salt on our lawns. If you get too much on it, what happens? It kills the grass.
Yeah.
So you get stuck into a catch-22 with this thing if you're not feeding the soil. And feeding the soil is keeping at least an 8 to 12-inch layer of mulch on top of the soil at all times. So eventually what's going to happen, I mean, I have a compost pile out in my backyard, and it's been there, and I use it, and I open it. It's made out of dog fencing, and one of the fences got bad, and I had to take it out. And you know what that soil was like underneath there? I could almost take my hands and dig it myself this way without having to shovel it, because the worms and all the fungi and all that soil biota had come up and actually cultivated the soil for me.
Nice.
I didn't have to do one thing to it.
Nice.
So it's about getting all this organic matter on the top of things, you know, and 8 to 12 inches is what you want to work with.
Okay.
Couple people that are really good in this, you know, the permaculture people. Amelia Hazlitt from France, she's got a system, permaculture based. It's raised in permanent raised beds. They're called self-fertilizing gardens. And no-till gardening, if you think about it as a self-fertilizing bed, that's what we're aiming for, where you're continuing to put layers of organic matter and compost and mulches like straw on the top. Interesting thing about using straw as a mulch, okay? It doesn't break down as quickly as compost and grass clippings, okay? It does break down faster than leaves, okay?
Right.
But straw mulch, and especially for you, Adam, I think, because you get really hot, well, we all get hot summers these days, okay? Straw mulch can actually cool the soil surface by 5 to 10 degrees. 5 to 10 degrees, as opposed to a gravel mulch or a dark compost mulch. Okay. Do you know why?
Because light.
It's made out of straws. Okay.
Right.
It's straws.
And
It's got both ends open. Yeah. So what happens if the straw goes like this? One end is lower than the other end. Okay. What happens when the sun hits it and heats the air inside of the straw? Hot air rises. It comes out the end of the straw and it draws cold air into the bottom this way, and you basically have an air-conditioned mulch that's going to lay on top of your soil.
Yeah,
so
I mean that's definitely a big issue where I am, because it gets, you know, regularly up to 100 degrees for days and days, even weeks. So, you know, it's fairly dry heat, but so mulches and cover something to cover the soil. Otherwise, it's just going to get cooked.
Right. Right.
Kill the biology in there. We're going to run.
Yes.
So, David, earlier I was talking to you about an issue I have, and I was wondering if you had any suggestions.
Absolutely.
A lot of my beds are near some table grapes I planted, and also some large trees in a neighbor's yard. And I know in the past when I turn the beds or do the double dig, I hit roots that are coming in to get nutrients and water from the beds. And so I'm thinking, well, gosh, I'd like to do no-till or not as much turning, but on the other hand, I don't want these roots to get super established. So any thoughts on that as far as keeping control of the roots?
Well, that's going to be an issue if you have a raised bed that's going to be near a tree, or in your case, Adam, near the grapevines, because the plant roots are always being attracted to moisture. That's what they grow towards. And because you have such excellent soil in your raised beds, and you've done all the right things, and you've done your composting, and you've done your loosening of the soil 24 inches long, those roots go, wow, I just found the best restaurant in the neighborhood, and I'm going to go in, I'm going to grow there. Okay?
Right. So maybe I'm just going to.
The only way you definitely don't want to have to take a tree out for a garden, because I don't like taking trees down. Adam, you don't want to take your grapes out. I know that.
Well, no,
so one thing you can do, one thing you can do, like if it's a raised bed with a frame on it, and if it's deep enough, 12 to 18 inches deep, some people will actually tack landscape fabric on the bottom of it, and then flip the frame over so that it lands on the soil. It's going to dissuade the roots from growing up into it, but eventually they are going to come up into it. So it's just something that you have to deal with. So in a situation like that, you have to feed and water twice as much. You have to feed for the roots, and you have to feed for the plants too. And that's about the best way to take care of a root problem.
Yeah, I think I'll also use a digging fork, or maybe I'll get a broad fork and, you know, punch it down there and rock it back and forth to start to break some of those roots, but not, you know, turn everything like you're saying, everything's in a layer. But if I can kind of cut off those roots in certain points.
Right, and that's the other thing. That's the other important thing. Don't cut. I don't want you to cut the roots off. Okay, you don't want to hurt the plants. But the other good thing about doing this no-till gardening and this deep bed cultivation of 24 inches deep is it forces and allows the plant roots, instead of growing outward like this, it allows them to grow down into the soil. So the deeper that you can go with your soil preparation, the less problems you're going to have with roots growing into your soil beds. So this deep tilling and this deep breakup of the soil and getting that organic matter down in the bottom where those roots will be happy and not have to grow up into your other area.
Yeah. Well, it'll be an ongoing thing. They'll figure it out.
Yeah,
so.
Gardening is always an ongoing thing. You know, you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes.
Yep.
So I tell people, fail. Come to my classes and fail, and then learn some more.
Well, Brent, did you have any more questions or comments before we start to wrap things up?
No, I mean, I'm just taking it all in. I've wanted to try this for quite a few years. One of the garden writers, Susan Applegate is her name.
Yeah.
She actually does this. We had talked for hours before, and I almost did it, and then the tiller was there, and I knew how to do that, and I just did it, you know. But I'll probably be tweeting you this weekend.
Perfect. That would be great. Yeah, that would be great. You know, I just want to tell you one other thing, too, about using a rototiller. Another reason why it's not the best thing to do when you're putting all this organic matter into it is when you disrupt all that, all the biota and things like that, you're basically creating a supercharged organic reactor that burns up all of that organic matter so fast when you put it in the ground that you got to start all over again, too. So it's taken twice the amount of product and twice the amount of time. Okay, this does not happen overnight.
Right.
I'll tell you that. It's going to take at least 3 years of no-till gardening to be able to get the soil where you see the beautiful gardens in the magazine and go, oh, I'm a no-till gardener, look what I can do. That's not the first year. That's 3 or 5 years down the road. But
well, Brent, maybe you can do it in kind of transitional, you know. You don't have to.
That's what I would do. I would do
chunk off. Yeah. So you don't have to cold
just
turkey.
Try a section, you know.
Try the worst section that's not growing. You can't grow anything in there anyways, and that would be the place to start doing this. That's where I would do it.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Well, Dave, thank you so much. And where should people find you? I know you have Facebook, Twitter. Is there a best place that people could
they can find me on Twitter. It's at David37771. I know others all week. And my Facebook page is a tremendous resource for horticultural information. I post all my classes there. That's David Clark WNY, like Western New York, davidclarkwny.com. And you can also follow me in all my classes and all my national speaking gigs on greatgardenspeakers.com.
All right. Well, we'll have to check out what you're up to. And also, you, I think you have a few YouTube videos. Is that something that?
Yeah, I do have some YouTube videos. One of them, they have been hit on all over the world. I actually teach gardeners in Pakistan and Afghanistan and India, propagating roses from the Florist. Okay, which with Mother's Day coming up, that thing has had over 14,000 hits on it. Another one that I do is preserving flowers, because I'm also a florist. How to dry in silica gel and how to make floral gifts and things like that. So. Growing roses in Western New York is a good place to find me too. You can see my first YouTube video.
Is it painful? Do you cringe? Or is it
I do. I watch it every now and then. It's like, okay, look how far you've come.
That's right. That's how you have to look at it. Absolutely. All right.
I have a few of those.
Yeah.
Yep, you can find me at adamcortell.com, and Bren, where can folks find you?
Yeah, brenhaas.com.
Yep, we're keeping it simple, just going with our name.
Yep.
So .com us, and you'll find it. All right, Dave. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on your program, Adam and Brent.
Thank you.